Hello and welcome to this episode of The Rest is Entertainment with me, Marina Hyde.
And me, Richard Osman. Hello, Marina.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well indeed. I'm looking forward to chatting this week. Got lots of exciting subjects.
Shall we start with Logan Paul, KSI and Mr. Beast? The three of the horsemen of the YouTube apocalypse are all involved in this story. So, listen, we know that YouTubers have millions upon millions upon millions of followers. We know they have millions upon millions upon of pounds in revenue. We know his brother Jake Paul, of course, is about to fight Mike Tyson. We know Mr. Beast has got his enormous show on Amazon about to come out, including lawsuits. But what we're going to concentrate on is Lunchly.
Just a new lunch product.
Listen, it's just three guys getting
trying
together,
to make your lunch better.
Trying to make your lunch a little better. So in America, they have a thing called Lunchables, which you don't really have over here. We did briefly, I think, Dairy Lee Lunchables, they were called. And it's a sort of pre-packed packed lunch with a kind of a cracker and like some processed fruit and a soft drink. And that's what Lunchables are, and made by Kraft. And it's like $1 billion industry.
You grab it off the shelf, it's everything in one go.
Yeah. So KSI, Logan Paul and Mr. Beast have thought this is an industry we might get involved in, and they've launched Lunchly. Now, Lunchly it consists of a cracker. One of them is a nacho cracker. You can get like a pizza cracker as well. A small bottle of Prime, which we've discussed before, is their soft drink, and a small Feastables chocolate bar, which is Mr. Beast's chocolate brand. So they have launched this in America, and there's been
How's it gone, Richard?
I would say mixed.
And we all know what mixed means. If you ever hear the reviews are mixed, yeah. The reviews have not been very mixed.
Yeah, the YouTube community are not happy about it either. So yes, there's been immediate kickback that they are exploiting their younger fans and feeding them food which is not particularly good for them in order to get a slice of this pre-packed lunch market. And the main guy who's called them out is a guy called DanTDM, who's one of the great old school YouTubers.
He's a Minecraft blogger.
TDM stands, of course, for the Diamond Minecart. So DanTDM immediately went online and said, I think this is unacceptable. I think they're ripping off their fans. KSI immediately came back and talked about moments where DanTDM might have ripped off his fans, which seemed slightly less egregious.
Can we also say that KSI has a song out at the moment which has somehow got caught up in all this? It's called Thick of It. It's genuinely the worst song
It does not star Chris Addison.
When you think, it doesn't star Chris Addison. When you think, okay, it's going to be bad, I'm telling you it's bad. Go and look at it, because it's genuinely like AI would look down on its nose at this. This is like a version of AI that they never even rolled out.
KSAI.
Yeah, KSAI. And he has had a mega backlash on them, which it looks as though they're promoting beyond all levels of cynicism, even that we'd expect from YouTubers, who are kind of the most exploitative marketers in many ways anyway.
And so as these things go, there's been this backlash, and people say, look, guys, there comes a point where you are actually ripping people off. And, everyone's allowed to make a living, and these guys have built up huge listenerships, they've built up huge brand loyalty. And so, they're allowed to monetize that. But people are saying perhaps this isn't the way you like to monetize it. And so having done that, there is now the backlash against the backlash. The other day I had to watch KSI do a reaction video about a Reddit thread all about him.
I've seen so many of these reaction videos as his now.
By the way, I wasn't massively aware of the work of KSI before. I know the Sidemen, but KSI himself, it's literally him doing pretend laughing for about 20 minutes. It is a tough watch. And it's people raising quite interesting points and him just laughing and calling them morons, which are, that's what people do. I then had to watch Logan Paul do a reaction video watching KSI's reaction video.
Yeah, we're really in the hall of infinite regress now. I watched so many videos of KSI having to watch other videos of people criticising KSI or reacting to KSI's videos in which KSI had laughed at other people's videos criticising KSI. It really does suggest to you that everything has eaten its tail quite long ago.
Guys, are you out of content?
Yeah.
Can we help you out?
This is content, but this is the thing. I mean, actually, some of the ways in which they launched... Logan Paul's just had a new baby, and he did this interview on his podcast, which, by the way, this podcast that he has is hugely sought after. Trump asked to be interviewed on his podcast in the summer because they think that they're like, Jake Paul is like his brother is a massive Trump supporter, and they think that this is a sort of hotline to bro votes and things like that. So, but Logan Paul has had a baby, and he turned up on his podcast with this thing in a little bundle, and said, I'm really excited to tell you about my new baby. I'm so excited to tell you about my new baby. You've got to chew through some really hard content before you get there. And then he says, hang on, I've just got to have a sip of Prime before I do this. Drinks some of his Prime and then starts taking out of the bag, not a baby, no, but Lunchleys.
No.
So yeah, it's all of it coming out like that onto the table, putting it out like that. And I think there were certain people who just thought like, oh my God, these guys have turned out to be cynical and now they're cynically using me. It's interesting what these guys have been good at, and they've done some really bad things and there've been backlashes against them before. But what they've always been good at is bringing it in the tent, and to some extent maybe those old videos were it's not working quite so well any longer where you just watch the haters videos and kind of laugh at them. I think people are still like, no, you have gone too far. So it's interesting.
And also occasionally there's the occasional one they're laughing where you go, no, that's actually quite a good point they've made there, which you're not really just doing a pretend laugh. It's not really addressing the quite interesting economic point they've made there.
But these guys, so what Logan Paul said, we spent our life creating content and building our brands. Now we want to create businesses. And it's sort of, the brand is the business for them. And what I think is they are sort of robber barons, really, though, because they are the absolute kind of dominant personalities of YouTube, these people. And but the robber barons sort of got away with it in the Gilded Age, and you slightly feel that even though people have lots of views in the original sense, they have a lot of views about these people. There is a slight version of the American dream kind of caught up in all of this, where you think that even though they hate them, it's that thing like, I'm working 3 jobs and one of them is cleaning a pool, but I do at some level still believe I will one day have a pool. So even though people hate these people, they sort of envy them, and they do keep looking at they do keep looking at it all, and they believe that maybe one day they will be as big as them. And there is something about that in the mentality of a whole generation of people who watch YouTube who think, yeah, but one day I'll be like that. So in some ways, I'm excusing this terrible thing that's being done to me. And I do think that's a...
Yeah, it's the absolute classic thing of it should make sense to tax richer people, because the only people who reject are richer people, and there's hardly any of them. But actually the people who reject are people who think, no, do you know what? One day I'm going to be rich. Yeah. And they object as well. And so it has that... See, I have sympathy with some of the stuff that KSI is saying when he's talking about the work he's put in.
He is the more sympathetic of the two, if I can euphemize.
He's put this work in to build his brand. He's allowed businesses, he's bringing businesses from areas where businesses wouldn't have started before. So I was looking into, do you know who Carlos Abrams Rivera is?
No, I don't.
Okay, so Carlos Abrams Rivera is the CEO of Kraft. So Carlos Abrams Rivera makes Lunchables. So Carlos Abrams Rivera is doing exactly what KSI and Mr. Beast and Logan Paul are doing, i.e. he's putting out a product which probably doesn't have optimal nutritional value and selling it in its billions to American children.
But he's a soup man. He's not a creator.
But isn't that the thing? You see interviews with this guy, with Carlos, and he eats 2 meals a day. He fasts for 16 hours a day. He's at the gym 6 days a week. He says,
I hate him too.
Yeah, he says, I also eat Lunchables twice a week. You think, Carlos, come on, man. Really, you eat a little cracker with a bit of processed cheese. By the way, Lunchly, their big claim, we have real cheese. That's the big claim of Lunchly.
That's what whereas the other, they can only call it cheese product or something. There's some sort of awful reconstituted name for it.
So Carlos is making these things and is not getting any grief at all because he's a businessman in a suit and has come up via a certain route. KSI and Logan Paul and Mr. Beast are doing exactly the same thing but getting a lot more grief for it.
Because it contravenes their brand though, doesn't it?
But see, this is the thing. If you're KSI, this is where I slightly lose the sympathy. If you are KSI or Logan Paul, when you say you are starting a business, okay, what you are not doing, you're not going into big, long research and development meetings. You're not going into big budget meetings. You're not going into the lawyers' meetings constantly where you're talking about what you can and you can't do. You're not going into schools. You're not going into focus groups. You're not doing the stuff that you do if you run a business, right? So you're not businessmen in that way. What you are is front people for a business. So you're the people, you put the product together, you are the people who promote it. So,
but equally, they're different because the brand doesn't exist without them. I've seen like Prime has been valued between 3 and 8 billion. But okay, say they can't sell. If they sell it, then there's nothing. It's like worth nothing. It's something completely different.
Yeah, it's fizzy water.
Yeah.
So the value you're bringing to the business is not 30 years in business. It is advertising. It is, it's promoting. And if you are doing that, then you do have to start thinking about what are my responsibilities? What is the age of my audience? What are the demographic of my audience? Is this something that's making their world a slightly better place? And KSI, all the way through his video, says, look, I'm getting all this grief and all I'm doing is trying to make a slightly better product than the product that's already on the market.
Big dreams, KSI.
Big dreams, KSI. And you think, kind of, yes, but what you're actually doing is you're hitching your brand to this specific product. And he says, oh, but what about this YouTuber? What about this YouTuber? Doesn't forget other YouTubers, okay? It's not what did they do? What did they do? What do you do? What do you do with this incredible opportunity you have? What do you do with this incredible platform that, by the way, you've worked to get? And this is the thing that you have chosen to do, and you have to own it. Don't look at all these comments and start laughing your head off and saying they're morons. Own it. Say, no, this is the thing I'm choosing to do. This represents me.
But they don't want to grow up and be that type of person because such another big part of the brand has been being this kind of outsidery, disruptive agent of chaos presence. That is the persona. So then it's quite hard for that person to go and run craft, but or a version of it. But what I always think with these people is that it is one of a thing that is slightly fascinating is the idea for this generation, for Gen Z, Gen Alpha. The idea of the infomercial for us was death. It's like QVC is where you go and your career's on the slide and you're selling diamond rings and that's what you do, or you're doing infomercials. These people, everyone on YouTube, not everyone on YouTube, but a huge number of these kind of mega YouTubers essentially work in the infomercial business, and that's what they do, and it's not uncool. It's expected amongst a young fan base. I mean, nobody sat in front of QVC when I sat in front of QVC and things like that because I found it interesting when I was a child. But nobody actually. You were aware of a sort of faded stardom coming out to peddle this or that, but this is completely different. That has been completely rescued from kind of infamy, the idea of the infomercial. In fact, it's the whole business model of YouTube. And I find that very interesting. The other thing I think is when you've got something where the asset value is completely divorced from price, which is what happened with Prime, where they were sort of, when they started this drink, and everyone will remember that there were sort of queues around the supermarkets at 6 a.m. You were only allowed to buy 3 bottles. I remember actually one of my sons seeing a kiosk on High Street Ken and saw that there was Prime, and he went up and said, how much is a bottle of Prime? And the guy went, 78 quid. It's like, 78? Okay, why not 8? Anyway, never mind. But what they were in the business of then was the scarcity business. They were in the business of creating hype. And it's like those kind of things that... the tulip mania back in the 17th century, which is one of the first sort of
I was hoping we were going to get onto that.
Well, no, because it's fascinating. For about 3 years, a similar time, maybe not. Prime hasn't been out for 3 years. In the 17th century, everyone went nuts for tulips. Now, the asset value of a tulip is, I hate to be rude, or a bulb, bullshit. Okay, it doesn't really mean anything.
I hate to be rude.
I hate to insult tulips.
Who you
It's problematic. This is problematic behaviour, but it wasn't in the 17th century, and so people went nuts for it. And then suddenly, the bottom falls out of the market because everyone's like, "What? We're all going nuts for tulips." What's happened with Prime is that their sales are sort of halved over a year because they were once in the scarcity businesses, and that was great, and you're creating a bubble, and it's really exciting, but then. Once you're just like a drink that is on the shelves, which now, by the way, you can get like 2 for the price. It's now part of 2 for the price of 1 offers. It's nothing like what it was.
Oh, really?
But then you're like,
so I can get
then
2,
you're in
I can get 2 for
competition with an actual suit. Then you're in competition with Coca-Cola, right? Because they make Fanta, they make Sprite. So you're in competition with these guys. It's like, well, they didn't come to play, okay? So they are, that's not the CEO is the brand. That's none of that. So. They are, as you say, they are businessmen, but they are divorced from, they are the brand in some ways. And it's very difficult to see. They've got to keep putting out new things in order to slightly build that kind of hype. But the question here is, have they finally found the thing that fans won't swallow in all senses? But or certainly in one sense. Is it like this is just too much? You're insulting me now.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Because again, I absolutely respect the right of anyone to build a business, of course. But you have to be honest with yourself if you're one of these people. Say, what is it that I'm actually doing? Am I a hype man, or am I someone who's going to business meetings 3 times a week? Am I going to the monthly board? Am I if suddenly there's an outbreak of listeria at one of the processing plants like they had with Boar Farms in America, am I liable? I suspect probably not. I suspect their liability has been written off. I suspect that there's some venture capital behind them somewhere who's taking on every single bit of the backroom part of this company.
But they're saying very dangerous things that you really wouldn't be able to say in the UK. I've seen them say, "What? At least our products don't have lead in them, like X, Y, or Z," and you're like, okay, I just, this would be very bad to say in a court of law. It would take you to a court of law if you said it in the UK. And I think that so they're not really versed in any of this stuff. I would love us to talk on a future episode about the kind of Gen Alpha obsession with skincare. The girls, I find it like mega depressing.
Expensive skincare too.
And expensive skincare. Things that like I did not buy until I had had several years of a good job at price point. It's absolutely mad. Anyway, I would like to talk about that.
Excellent.
On a future issue, please.
Do that. It's where our culture is going, and as you say, it's direct sales from mouthpieces who are earning money every single time someone buys the thing that they're directly selling, and you can't do that in a blithe way. You can't just laugh it off. And you see Logan Paul and KSI and Mr. Beast, laughing it off, and you think, listen, it's okay to make $1. Okay, that's all right, but you cannot laugh it off. You're the CEO of a big company, so take some responsibility for. I mean,
they are probably billionaires.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, if you take the value of their prime enterprise, as people have, but people have put it in a very wide sort of landing strip with the actual value of it, but.
And also, lots of people have tried to do exactly what they've done, and they failed. These are the guys who really did it. These are the guys who landed the plane.
Well, it helps to be in early, which they were.
Yeah.
In the art form or whatever.
But it's often we'll say, well, look, go out and have a look at this stuff, and if you want to see the KSI sort of talking about the Reddit thread about him and Logan Paul talking about KSI, do honestly. On this occasion, I wouldn't massively recommend it. It's not. You don't leave it feeling better than you joined it. That's for sure.
No, but look at KSI's song and name a worse one. Honestly, I'm stunned by it. It's really genuinely extraordinarily bad.
Wow.
It's like I really try not to break the glass on the expression "a new low" too often, but let's do it for today. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Sky, who are proud partners of The Rest is Entertainment, where you can watch Sky originals, including Sweetpea, a darkly comic thriller starring Ella Purnell.
Marina, do you like coming-of-age stories?
I most certainly do, Richard.
How about a coming-of-rage story?
Okay, yes, please.
That's clever, isn't it? Well, Sweetpea is a twisted coming-of-age story, as you say, starring Ella Purnell, who people might know from Yellow Jackets, Fallout as well. Unbelievable actor. She's Rhiannon, a quiet wallflower turned serial killer. So her life is pretty mundane at the beginning of it. She continuously is overlooked by her boss. Her long-standing crush ignores her. A high school bully has resurfaced, and her dad is really sick. Then suddenly everything in her life is turned upside down. The wallflower is gone. In its place, a young woman capable of anything. Can she keep her killer secret?
I can't wait to see this. I love any form of, anyone just finally having had enough and losing it.
Yeah, if you're looking for a thriller with a great bit of dark comedy, which is exactly what this is, it's unpredictable. Rhiannon's kill list keeps growing. No one is safe. But the big question is, will she get caught? It's funny. It's very, very dark. The performances are extraordinary. It's strongly recommended. So watch Sky Original Sweetpea from 10th of October on Sky. We talked a little bit about this show a few times before. The trailers are out. Everyone seems to be getting excited. I think it's fair to say Marina is excited as well. Rivals is out. Rivals
is Jilly Cooper's 1988 novel about a battle for a regional television franchise. Stay with me, everybody. It is 8 hours, and I have to say, it is totally joyous, a complete riot. There are glances in it that I've laughed at more than entire episodes of sitcoms. But anyway, we'll come back to that. Jilly Cooper's works have been adapted twice, right? We once did Riders, which is the first book, and what we've now come to call the Rutcher Chronicles, which are all these kind of... She doesn't mind the tag bonkbusters, by the way.
Yeah.
She doesn't like steamy novels because it sounds like someone's left one of our books on the Argo. But Jilly likes the touch.
And Rutshire, by the way, this is where they
it's
all
like a sort of
live.
fictionalised... It's
Yes.
a fictionalised Cotswolds. Jilly Cooper is OG Cotswolds, not like one of those awful people from London who are in it now. And then they also did The Man Who Made Husbands Jealous, which is another of these books. I'm sorry to everyone involved in these, but they were really badly done and the fans of the books hated them and they just didn't work. And I think we can't call anything unadaptable in this golden age of television, can we? Because, it's like, his dark materials, like multiple parallel universes. Everyone's got an animal demon. Yeah, sure, go ahead. But then it's like, sorry, a man as good looking as Rupert Campbell Black. This is an unadaptable book. You cannot do this. Well, they have found someone amazing, a guy called Alex Hassel, who's brilliant in this. Very, very good. Also in it, Aidan Turner, David Tennant, Catherine Parkinson. It's brilliant. It's packed with sort of hilarious, and everyone gets the tone. In the old days, Barbara Walters, who's like a doyen of American TV interviewers, would list her most fascinating people of the year.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to put, if I were making a list, I would put Felicity Blunt in my in my list. Okay, she's a literary agent, but she's a sort of super agent. She's amazing, and what's really interesting, what she did with this, she absolutely loved Jilly Cooper, like all her life, kind of was obsessed with her, loved these books. And Felicity is also a trained lawyer, but she's now a literary agent. And I
always put trained lawyers are my favourite types of lawyers.
Yeah, trained lawyers.
Don't you think?
She's a literary agent. So she then thinks, okay, where are all the rights of these books? They're all in different places. There's like these rolling options. Everything's gathering dust. So she spends years getting back all the rights. And she becomes Jilly Cooper's literary agent only when Jilly's agent retires and she says, I'll fight you for her, anything. Please let me have Jilly. Okay. She gradually gets all these books back. And one of the things she notices when she's going through the archive is that the guy who turns out to be, who has ended up being the showrunner, Dominic Treadwell-Collins, who used to be the executive producer of EastEnders, and Alex Lamb, who was his partner at this company called Happy Prince, who was the story editor of EastEnders. No matter how many jobs he'd gone to, he'd always written about, like, is there any chance of adapting Jilly Cooper?
Oh, really? Great.
So she was like, okay, here's a sort of kindred spirit. Anyway, they somehow decide that they're going to do it, and Jilly's on board. And
can I say, by the way, at this point, lots and lots of people buy rights to books. Lots of people go, oh my God, I love that book. Lots of people say, oh, I know there's a producer. Almost every single project at that point either collapses or goes ahead and is bad. It's very, very, very hard to do a proper, decent adaptation when there's so many stakeholders, when the author is involved, when you're involved, when, the teenage you remember something, when someone else... It's very, very hard to keep a train like that on the tracks.
I 100% agree. And but she did also think it was interesting, Felicity, that there was someone who'd sold that many millions of copies, because Jilly Cooper's books have sold so many millions of copies, but she'd been sort of underexploited as a kind of screen property. So she thought there's lots of things that were worth it. Anyway, everyone is really on board. They're in the rain in the pub in the Cotswolds. And they sort of decide, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to go ahead with it. And they really want Laura Wade to be the lead writer. Now, Laura Wade's brilliant. They think she's really good at writing about class, but not actually writing about class in a sort of capital letters way. She did Posh, a brilliant play at the Royal Court. Home, I'm Darling, which was a really good theatrical comedy, and it starred Catherine Parkinson, who is in this and is sensational. It basically ends up with Dominic Treadwell-Collins, Felicity Blunt, all down at Jilly Cooper's house with sort of 10 pieces of A4 trying to work out how they divide up episodes. And Jilly obviously wants to have champagne every single day at 11 o'clock. Yeah. And 10 minutes later we'll say, okay, but if we're waiting for 12, is it actually in the fridge so it's cold? And apparently she puts an Alka-Seltzer by your bed. Very classy.
Aww.
And anyway, so they go through this wonderful thing. And what I'm very interested in is the tone of this, because it's such a hard tone to pull off. A lot of people don't really know what Jilly Cooper's books are. Obviously, they're great romances and they're very funny, but it's a sort of social comedy. The thing it reminded me of when you think of like almost like a tone of one is something like Succession, where once you've seen it and it's all hung together and it's all work, you're like, oh, I get that it's that tone.
Yeah.
But it didn't sort of exist before it had to invent itself.
The one thing people genuinely don't, I think about, and is the hardest thing to do, is tone. It really is, because the story is often there if you're doing an adaptation. The characters are often there. Some of the dialogue is often there. But that idea, because a writer, all they're thinking about is tone, which is how is somebody reading this? What's the line between comedy and reality? How do I make people laugh? How do I make people cry?
It's everything.
Why is this slightly different to other things? A crime book, a Scandi noir thing. It's tone. It's tone of voice. It's pacing. It's the order in which things happen. If you get plot 1% off, that's absolutely fine. If you get characters 1% off, it's fine. If you get tone even 1% off, nobody's watching, nobody's reading, nobody's listening, because you're just thinking, I don't really know what this is. And as a viewer, you have to know what something is. And as you say, with something like Jilly Cooper, she has that incredible tone, and people who won't have read her will kind of go, yeah, but it's X. And you think, what do you mean
it's
X?
a genre of one. Go and look at it.
100% that. But to me, I'd be terrified of putting that on screen, because as you say, a book and a TV series are very, very different things. And the smart thing of getting someone like Laura Wade, who is so brilliant and loves the source material, at least at that point you are in with a fighting chance.
Absolutely. But you have to communicate it at every stage down. So the actors, they were so careful. This has been reported as a no arseholes rule, but you'll obviously have to bleep this. It's in fact a no rule, which is what they said throughout, which is like, if anyone is difficult here. David Tennant was kind of like a father of the set. Like, he was absolutely... See, if it comes from the top and everyone was sort of on the same page. And they had a complete right doing this. But when I went to a screening of the first 2 episodes, it's really interesting. It was like everyone was laughing so much. It's an infectious kind of energy, the whole thing, because, as I say, tonally it coheres, and they've somehow it's a high wire app, but they've done it. But I was sitting with a friend of mine who is brilliant, writes about television, and she said, God, you almost have to teach yourself to watch something like that again. Yeah. Because there is no message. There's no, you can't really imagine. One of the things that you always get asked in a commissioning process is, some commissioner will say, yeah, but why now? And you're like, the only possible answer to this can be, because it's fun. That's not to say that some of the sexual politics and things like that are not really interestingly explored, because I suppose that's what Jilly Cooper was doing the first time round anyway. And there've always been kind of gay characters in her books, and it's, in lots of ways it's kind of very forward thinking, but it's a different time for those characters.
Well, so it's interesting that, because I have read, I've yet to see it, but I'm looking forward to it very, very much indeed. When it's talked about the fact that some of it is fairly unreconstructed, and they've lent into that, and I was wondering if it's because, depressing though it may seem, it's from 1988, and that is 36 years ago. So actually, it's a sort of a period piece. It is sort of what here were the politics of a particular era from many, many years ago before you were born, and so actually it's got that sort of the documentary elements of a period piece that you can talk about. So actually, it's being very truthful to the era by leaning into that and having things that might have been sanitised out of dramas in the 35 years since Rivals came out. Absolutely,
I think you're really right. And the other thing is, from all the stories that still come out, we can see that loads of these things are still happening. That we just sort of pretend that because they've got certain types of this or that officer in a company that they don't happen, but they do happen. And it is interesting to me that this is Disney. I mean, obviously Disney have got different strands, and they've got Hulu and things like that, which you've seen Pam and Tommy. I mean, you do see full frontal penises in this, I should say. Sorry.
Whoa.
They wanted to have equal opportunity. So for every pair of tits, there is a welly. And
there should be 2.
Yeah.
How does that work?
You could do some kind of genital audit, Richard. I want to steer you away from it, but you could. Another part of me does think that right at the top of Disney, Bob Iger, who's probably thinking, I think we went too political with lots of our movies. And I'm not suggesting that he has got a personal hand in commissioning this, but it certainly fits with a move away, perhaps, from the kind of really kind of slightly heavy-handed political messaging that he might think has got Disney into has perhaps led it down a financial cul-de-sac in recent years.
It's fascinating that we're told that a younger audience won't put up with certain things. And by the way, an awful lot of what has been got rid of from the 80s is absolutely belongs in the bin, and it's fantastic. But fascinating that the younger generation, Friends is the thing they love most of all, and Friends couldn't be more problematic in lots of the ways. You watch Frasier in the morning sometimes, and there's jokes where you go, Oh, really? Oh, I forgot. Okay, yeah, that's what we used to do. But people, I think that generation could sort of understand what it is they're watching and the context within what they're watching, and it'd be fascinating to see how
But I don't think any of these things have gone away. I think that lots of people are subject to, similar kind of pressures and sewer of lots of different types of male behaviour. Women, I'm just talking about in this particular case. But yes, I think that there's lots of that still, and pretending it's not around, but. It's very interesting. Another thing, I was talking to I had this really absolutely lovely dinner with 2 of my most beloved writer friends when we were on the last night in LA, just before I came back after the premiere of the show in LA. And we were talking about adaptation and like who was doing adaptation, what's it like. And And one of the things we said, one of my friends said, was that, oh my God, TV really eats plot. Where I know people have adapted books and they've either had to put 2 books together to get enough, because something, you can have 5 pages on a character's interior life, and that's just like a split second on TV.
I don't do that.
No, no. But Jilly Cooper's books are so packed full of plot that there's characters and bits of plot that it's so faithful to the book. It's managed to get. She's got so much going on that it actually there is enough there. They don't have to create whole other plot lines or B plots or C plots to just kind of make it all work and hang together. And I think that's really, there's a little bit of that as there always is when you're doing an adaptation, but far less than I think there would be with a lot of authors, because she's really kind of packs it full. At the start of every one of her books, there are these enormous cast lists with kind of.
But even like the names of the horses.
Oh yeah, all the dogs are named. And everybody's and with a little bit about their personality at the start. So
I love it. I love in her book sometimes like the animals will sort of like a horse will win the Grand National. You shouldn't win the Grand National. And that's like one of the big characters, and you're like, come on.
Yeah. You're really rooting for them. Yes, and also the great thing about them is that they kind of cross between lots of the characters, cross between lots of the books. And Felicity, I know, was thinking, I mean, I really love those early Marvel movies. Could I could I bring all these properties back from the various places they were like left out in dusty options and create something where you could actually cross over all these characters and leading through various phases? I just love the idea of the Jilly Cooper TV universe.
Felicity Blunt, as you said, loved these books and understood they hadn't been well made before. But the other thing she really had going for her, the thing she genuinely understood, is that these books are brilliantly written. And that's the thing that's misunderstood. And it's often the fate of female writers, and often the fate of female genre writers, particularly.
And the characters are brilliant.
Exactly that. And she knew enough people who'd read these books and go, these are actually brilliant. That whatever the sort of, the kind of general voice of the culture is saying about, these are fripperies and we're reading more important books. These are beautifully written social satires, and they're doing something that other people can't do. And they are funny, which is the hardest thing to do, and they're properly funny. And it is that thing of underestimating particularly female writers that's happened for years and years and years, where you suddenly go, no, hold on. I mean, I was looking in 1988. The big books that came out, Silence of the Lambs, that's endured. Satanic Verses, Brief History of Time. But what's the one we want to watch? It is Rivals, written by Jilly Cooper, who for years and years has sort of culturally, is she a figure of fun? And of course she's not. Anyone who reads the books and understands the books and knows them understands that she is the one making fun. She is the one who understands more than you understand. When you look at the people who write about her and have got their kind of names on the front of her books, like Marion Keyes and Jojo Moyes, again, these, by the way, who are brilliant writers, also underestimated.
But another thing that someone like Felicity Blunt and Dominic Trevor-Collins and Alex Lamb and all these people who are involved in this realise is that women love these books, and they might shed lots of their books, but they'll keep their Jilly Cooper books and reread one a year. They absolutely love it. There's a huge audience out there that, it's definitely, some men are put off by the covers because they've always got like someone's bottom and a hand and a red high heel or whatever it is, and some people think, oh, I know what this is, but they don't know what it is, and when they read it they think, oh, this is really amazing. I really like this, and I love this story, and I love the way she talks.
I cannot wait to see this out on Friday.
It's out on Friday. Everything comes out at once, and it's 8 episodes, 1 hour on Disney Plus.
On Disney Plus. I know everyone doesn't have Disney Plus, and that's hard when we're so enthusiastic about something. But that's the business they're in, isn't it? Producing stuff that's so good, you have to get it.
And it's such a uniquely British thing. So I will also be fascinated to see what Americans think of it.
And whose penis is it going to be?
Yeah.
Okay, talking of things that were huge in the 80s and are still around now, the Paparazzi.
That's a lovely link.
Thanks.
That's really charming.
Thank you. I've been in the business a long time. Listen, too long.
We're going to talk about the Paparazzi this week. Sydney Sweeney, who you'll know from Euphoria, White Lotus, Anyone But You. How have I not talked about Glenn Powell for quite a few weeks? I've got to remedy that, but not now.
Friend of the podcast.
Yeah. Now, Sydney Sweeney has given an interview in which she said that the paparazzi kind of besiege her all the time. She mentioned a time on some sort of holiday in the US. They turned up at her house and they said, if you just it was bothering so much. They said at the door, if you just tell her to come outside in a bikini, then I'll take pictures and then I'll leave you alone. And she said that was reported by people saying, "Oh, she called the paparazzi herself," and I assume that is the reaction of people to reports of or to snatch pictures of her from her. She's got a sort of waterfront house anyway. And she says that there's guys in kayaks hiding in bushes in the ocean. They get there at 8. They won't
Hiding
leave.
in bushes in the ocean.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was thinking.
Is that what she said?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Hold on a
The
second.
old ocean bushes. No, I think she lives on one of those sort of creeks or.
Yes, and there's little islands.
Yeah, so there are
sure.
little bits of that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me because I was thinking, like, is this like because we talk about the paparazzi and what's happened, and you can think of all these phases. Obviously, photographers have always been a thing for as long as there have been movie stars and then TV stars. And we kind of go through these periodic fits of morality about them. And obviously, the way they chased Diana, but she, but by the end, I suppose she felt quite trapped, and she certainly worked with a number of paparazzi, thinking if I somehow take ownership of this situation, that will get better. Well, obviously, it really didn't. And in the wake of her death, tabloids said, the Mail said, and I think the Sun followed them, said we will never carry any more paparazzi pictures. Well, I think that probably lasted about a year.
Yeah.
If that, I think. But the decade when it became really sort of extraordinary for me was the noughties, where it's that huge explosion of celebrity culture when you're kind of either talking about Islamic fundamentalism or you're talking about celebrity culture, and it's like there's only two subjects in the whole decade. And it gave birth to the sort of idea of the train wreck star that decade. So you've got like Britney, Lindsay Lohan, people who are, who are fallen women, really. A lot of Britney Spears finally being able to talk about all of this stuff has come in her autobiography, The Woman in Me, in which she details in sort of remorseless detail what it was like to be under total siege.
I think they blocked in the ambulance when she's been taken for treatment, and they're absolutely
everything was
lawless.
taken out of her bins. They would sell her pregnancy tests. One of the most horrible photos I ever saw was this guy who used to follow her around all the time, and people were wondering if she's pregnant, blah blah blah, and he upskirt photographed her, and there was period blood on her knickers, and the headline, they published these, and the headline was "She's not pregnant." And you can't sort of imagine that it happened. But think of even the sort of on a much more sort of sanitized level, but it's still, as far as I'm concerned, like completely awful. And I remember writing about it at the time. The celebrity magazines, Heat magazine, things like that. It was all circled celebrity sweat patches, their cellulite. Everyone, they were trying to sort of make women into a sort of circular collection of circlable body parts, and they were obsessed with people falling, people becoming a train wreck, and so it was Lindsay Lohan, Misha Barton, all these people who'd had success and then were going off the rails, and obviously Britney was kind of chased more than anybody, and it's so extraordinary when you see those pictures of her when she'd shaved her head and she's trying to hit them with the umbrella, and just everyone ran them, and it's quite obvious to anyone now that she's having a massive mental breakdown, and it was just run everywhere, and everyone run them, and there was no sort of compunction about doing so. And then so you think, okay, well, things are better now, aren't they? I don't know, because people, we know from the Britney documentary, and we know from the Free Britney movement that all of these sort of, we now look back and think, oh, actually, Justin Timberlake was really shitty to her, and she took all this heat which she didn't deserve, and I see, I've readapted my social mores, and I understand that what happened to her was bad, and all these people who published these pictures were bad. But then I'm not quite so sure. Now I think of, first of all, everyone is a paparazzi now.
Yes.
Everyone has a camera phone, and you look at what we talked about the other week with sort of someone like Chapel Roan, who's saying, toxic fans. She's talking about people taking pictures of her all the time and chasing her, and
pictures of her family.
Yeah, and pictures of her family. And it's interesting, and I slightly wonder quite why that has happened. And part of me thinks is that people became very literate about paparazzi photographers. So you could see, I always used to notice who had sold to paparazzi, but there were certain agencies.
You could tell by certain things about the
images. There's an
images.
agency in LA called Splash that often you could see had maybe done a deal. Now, if you look, I always now look at, I've always just look at the corner of photos. So if you're looking at something on, say, Mail Online, if I see Backgrid in the corner, I think, everybody is in this photo, knows this photo is happening.
Okay, so Backgrid is an agency who certain celebrities would say,
I think, well,
take this candid shot of me at this
they're
time.
welcome to ring in and say they've never collaborated with a celebrity, but I don't think they will. Katie Price, you'll see lots of pictures of her that are taken from within hotels, probably. And I think, it's reasonable to expect that that's a way of making money. And there was a whole vogue for people allowing themselves to be photographed looking really sort of overweight and out of shape in some very skimpy shorts in a park, but which was always the prelude to them doing a I Got Fit
No
DVD.
way.
Yes.
Really?
But this was, and it became a thing. And if you follow, as you know, one of my preferred rabbit holes is the comments on something like Mail Online. If you look long time ago, people would be like, oh, I'll wait for the fitness video announcement. So people became very literate. And what they thought was, all celebrities do this. Now, this obviously isn't the case because some celebrities, a particular type of celebrity, makes their money from being, this is before there was really influencing.
Yeah.
Many of these people might have had different career paths now and maybe cheerier ones. I don't know.
They were proto-influencers.
They were
the first people
proto-influencers.
to work this out.
Yeah, and to realise that some drama and some allowing people into what could be private moments was a way, but in a covert way, of a slightly sort of oblique way.
Well, it's interesting if you are famous but not for anything in particular, so you don't actually have a way of making money other than your fame, then that is probably the first port of call. And
obviously these sort of attractive people with kind of interesting personalities, but who maybe don't do anything in particular, nowadays they would obviously become influencers.
There's a job.
There is a job, but there wasn't necessarily back then. Once again, the moral view has become completely clouded, where you just think, oh, Sydney Sweeney wants this. She's really rich. She doesn't need to do any of this, by the way. She's like her career is going very, very well, and there's no way that she does any of these deals. She's a different type of celebrity but people tell themselves that.
She has a way of making money.
Yeah,
which is she's an incredibly
good
actor.
Going very well. And Chaperone doesn't need to do this, but you're part. You can get the collective imagination can get clouded and think it's fine. I have streamed her songs, therefore I have a right to do this. And the fact that everyone has a camera now makes things completely different for women. I honestly think that in lots of ways they might not be upskirting you anymore. Which, by the way, Emma Watson used to said that on my 18th birthday the paparazzi lay on the pavement to put the cameras up my skirt, and they published those pictures. You went to events like that, you would see paparazzi with their cameras right down, trying to get them as they get out of the taxi, right under their skirt. That was strangely outlawed in 2019. Yeah, that's this century, guys. That's not quite 5 years ago, in fact, that it happened. But until then, it was just sort of regarded as part of the job.
Yeah, the truth is almost no celebrities are interested in having their photo taken by paparazzi, paparazzi. As you say, there are occasions where they'll set things up. There are occasions where if you go to events, if you go to like a premiere or something, where there will be a bank of photographers, all of whom are incredibly professionals, usually the same group who are great and incredibly, know what they're doing. And if you go to an event, you'll dress up.
Yeah, it's a red carpet. They're not trying to make you look crap. They're not trying to get you at your lowest and worst.
100% that, because that's the one thing as a celebrity now is if someone takes your photo, it exists forever. So sometimes you go to an event and they say, oh, there's just a photographer, could they take a photo? And you go, well, no, because look at what I'm wearing, and it'd be lovely for you to have it on your leaflet, but it will exist forever and ever and ever. But so there are occasions where, of course, celebrities have their photos taken, and there are certain celebrities who will have their photo taken by paparazzi, as you say. If you were someone where every day someone is outside your house, like every day, and every day you're sort of, sometimes you wake up in the morning and you go out and you haven't done your hair, or you're not wet, you think, oh, what am I wearing? This is no good. Or, you've had a bad morning, or just whatever it is, or you've got a cold, and suddenly every morning there's just somebody doing that. And lots of celebs have it; they're just absolutely in their faces the whole time, and so it's sort of, there are plenty of places to get photos of people, and as you say, some people do court it, but by and large, it's not something that someone who has other ways of making money is interested in. So I would say almost every single celebrity is not asking to be paparazzi photoed on their street.
Not stalked like that. But I do think the sort of bit that's most interesting in lots of ways is the way that everyone has become one now, and everyone, and there's that kind of slightly panopticon feel where you're constantly having to be in pictures. But everybody, and if you see celebrities say, "I'm sorry, I don't do so," and I've seen people who do this. People think they're the worst people in the world because someone goes up to a celebrity and says, "Can I do a selfie?" And very, very famous people who would be asked 500 times a day. Some of them say, "I'm so sorry, I don't do them," because they don't want to be constantly doing this. And it's as though they've said, I spit on my fans.
Yeah.
And people lack the imagination to imagine what it's like for them. And I think that's interesting. The other thing I think is sort of quite interesting is that what used to happen with part of the reason that people made those slightly devil's bargains, I think, by staging paparazzi pictures is because the paparazzi another skein of that was that sometimes the paparazzi would say, "Hi there, I'm on this beach in Dubai and I'm going to take pictures of you whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
If you work with me, we'll do them at Magic Hour when the sun's just, and it's lovely lighting, and you can look at all of them and approve which ones you want to use." I mean, sometimes you could almost see the shadow of the photographer in the front of frame because,
that's funny.
But you can see why people did it. Now, of course, the technology does this for you. Everything is filtered. Everybody's putting filters on. And everyone is kind of posing for their own paparazzi pictures all the time. And our relationship with images in those ways has become so sort of corrupted and clearly so commodified that we all, lots of people effectively work for the platform. You're all working for Mark Zuckerberg. You're staying on the platform and you're posting pictures of yourself and you're all part of this whole kind of photography industrial complex.
Yeah.
And I sort of think that that's something that has happened a lot.
Can I ask you one very specific question about this area? Because just looking back on some of the old paparazzi things, and it's like Madonna and Sean Penn's wedding, and they said, they found out where it was by going through the bins. So do you remember like years ago when they kept saying, the way they get all these stories on celebrities is they go through their bins? Were they actually going through their bins, or was that they were just listening to the voicemail and that was the excuse saying, "Oh no, we found it in their bin"?
Well, they did go through the voicemails, certainly. They went through huge amounts of voicemails, but there was a guy called Benji Pell, a guy called Benji the Bin Man, and he used to get mega stories by going through people's bins. But he got a lot of he was an extraordinary sort of odd character, and he used to also go through the bins of lawyers' offices who perhaps had not been as shreddy as they should have been with their documents, and he got a lot of stuff from there, and he got a lot of stuff from celebrities' bins. Yeah, so there were people who did that, but no, on the industrial scale was. I'm not convinced there were a whole army of people going through the bins. Some, yes, there were, and there always have been people who've done that because it's a sort of very easy way to do things, and trying to pay off hotel cleaners to give you the contents of the internal hotel bins, which is what happened to Britney Spears with her pregnancy tests and things like that. But in general, I think that by that stage, a huge amount of it was coming from voicemail, which is definitely a form of
bin
really
dipping.
Sick, electronic trespass. We just didn't have the sort of, again, people didn't have the imagination for it, and I think a lot of people didn't even fully get that because it wasn't illegal, because obviously the law hadn't caught up with the technology, it was wrong.
Any recommendations this week? I
will recommend the second series. If you haven't watched the first series, watch the first series first of Alma's Not Normal, Sophie Willand's Alma's Not Normal, which is brilliant. So good. She's so good. I'm also, by the way, really enjoying her in Ludwig, which can I recommend Ludwig as well, please? If you're not watching Ludwig on the BBC, I'm really enjoying that. She's in it as well, but it's mostly David Mitchell and Anna Maxwell Martin, who I have a huge girl crush on, and I think it's fantastic. I'm really enjoying it.
But Alma's Not Normal, absolutely. I still haven't caught the second series, but the first series is genuinely brilliant, and it's the sort of thing that people say that it doesn't get made anymore. I think it's absolutely been made. Yeah, Alma's Not Normal, and you can catch up with the first series on iPlayer as well. So watch the first series first, and then dive into the second one. I also want to recommend a sitcom which is on Disney Plus. And it's The English Teacher. It's only 7 parts, I think, but it's absolutely, just dive straight into it. It's one of those ones, we were talking about tone earlier, and the first 2 minutes, you're like, I get it. Okay, I get what you're doing. Absolutely get the tone. It's slightly different to what I've seen before. I get where we are. Absolutely love that. We binged the whole 7 episodes of The English Teacher on Disney Plus. Is that us done?
I think that is us done.
Yeah, it seems a long time ago we were talking about Logan Paul and KSI. because we've had such fun with rivals in between.
Well, yeah, it's been a riot. It's been a hoot. It's been a Cotswold hoot.
See you on Thursday for
See you on Thursday.
questions and answers.
Absolutely.
See you then.